In the deep silence of space, a large black ship moved like a shadow across the stars. It had no lights, no sound, no signal, only cold metal. And a hidden purpose. This ship belonged to the Zarnak Empire, the most feared race in the galaxy. They had taken over planets, burned cities, crushed armies, and erased histories. Now they had found something new, a small blue planet spinning quietly around a yellow sun. They called it Sector 9G17, but the planet called itself Earth. Inside the ship the air was heavy and cold. Tall creatures stood around a glowing table. Their skin was gray, their eyes black, and wide, their voices like wind moving through a cave. They wore dark armor and had long, sharp arms. The leader was Commander Trull, a battle-worn Zarnak, with scars across his face and a mind built for war. He looked at the planet on the screen, his face still and unreadable. Beside him, a younger officer spoke with doubt in his voice. The bipeds live here. They are weak. They have no plasma weapons, no space force, no shields. Their world is open and soft. Trull did not answer right away. He simply stared at the spinning globe. He pressed a button, and data filled the screen. Images of cities, machines, humans, their wars, their art, their laughter, their tears. They are strange, Trull finally said. Not like the others. They fight each other, even when they are alone, and yet they grow, they change, they build. Another officer leaned in, confused. They are emotional, chaotic. They destroy their own kind. And still they survive. Trull said they have fire in them, not the kind that burns cities, but the kind that refuses to die. A silence fell over the room. The officers looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Send a scout, Trull ordered. Small and fast. Enter the atmosphere. Do not attack, observe, and return. Do not be seen. Minutes later, a thin silver drone detached from the ship. It entered Earth's orbit, invisible to radar, silent as the void below. It saw oceans and mountains and forests and cities. It flew over war zones and peace rallies, deserts and playgrounds, labs and temples. It saw humans walking, talking, laughing, crying, running, dancing, fighting, loving. It saw them make mistakes and still move forward. It saw them build and destroy and build again. Inside the Zarnak ship, the officers watched the images with quiet awe. They are animals, said one officer. They live in skin and bone and blood, and yet they make art, music, machines, ideas. They imagine things that do not exist, and then they create them. Commander Trull watched a video of a child learning to walk, falling again and again, but always standing back up. His fingers curled slowly around the edge of the table. They do not give up, he said. That is their weapon. A new video appeared on the screen. It showed human history, war after war, famine, floods, bombs, disease, suffering. And still they lived, still they smiled. They fear, but still move forward. They lose, but still try again. They are soft, but do not break, Trull whispered. An old Zarnak general stepped forward, angry. We do not fear such things. We will crush them, like we crushed the others. They are unready. They have no defense. Trull turned to him and spoke with quiet strength. No, they are not ready, but they will be. If they know we are coming, they will change. They will rise. A moment passed, then he gave the order. Bring one of them here, just one, not a leader, not a scientist, not a king. Bring a soldier, a simple one. I want to look into its eyes. I want to see what drives it. The officers nodded and left the room quickly. The ship moved into low orbit, hidden by clouds. Its beam reached down, silent and soft. It found a battlefield on Earth, a place full of dust and smoke and broken machines. It found her. Sergeant Yen Reyes, human female, 29 years old, soldier trained in survival, language, hacking, strategy. Her squad was gone, her radio dead, her arm bleeding, but her eyes sharp and alive. The beam took her fast, before she could scream, before she could fire. She woke up inside a cold room, metal walls, dark lights, her weapons gone, but her mind still clear. She stood slowly and looked around, her breath calm, her heart steady. And then she smiled. Far above Earth, in the quiet belly of a warship, the Zarnak had made their first mistake. They thought they had found another race to study, another world to conquer. But they had found something else. They had found humanity. And humanity was not what they expected. Not even close. Inside the ship, high above the Earth, the air was quiet, but tense. Long shadows moved across silver walls as the Zarnak scientists circled the human subject. She stood calm and still, her eyes watching everything, her hands relaxed, but her mind sharp. The name on her uniform read Yen Reyes, but to them she was just Specimen 001. Commander Trull watched from behind a black screen. He wanted to see how this biped would react when taken apart and studied like all others, but something about her made him wait, Just a little longer, he had seen fear in the eyes of many captured species, before trembling limbs, desperate screams, hollow cries. But this human was different. She was not afraid. The scientists started their skin. Beams of blue light passed over her body, collecting data. Her heart beat, steady, her brain active, her muscles slightly tensed, ready to fight or run. But she did not move. She simply stared at them, as if she were the one observing. The youngest Zarnak scientist leaned closer and spoke in their native tongue. It is soft, small, weak skin, thin, no claws, no armor. Bones break easily, and still it stands without shaking. The oldest scientist replied, without looking up, "There's more to strength than muscle, more to danger than teeth. I feel something in this, one I cannot explain." Suddenly Reyes tilted her head and spoke. "You can hear me, right?" The Zarnak froze, not because she spoke, but because she spoke in their language, her voice clear, her tone perfect. She smiled a little and continued, "I know what you're doing. Scan sensors, data collection. I know your type, tall, proud, old tech, high ego. You think we're animals." The young scientist backed away. The older one looked closer. "She has learned our language in one night. How is this possible?" She was unconscious. Reyes tapped her temple lightly. "You should check your data logs. Your translation files are not locked very well. Your system echoes sound back and forth. I just had to listen and match meanings. Your ship basically taught me while I was asleep. Thanks for that." Commander Troll narrowed his eyes, his hand curling near the glass. "No other species has ever broken our language protocol. No other creature has ever learned that fast." The older scientist whispered, "She is not just strong, she is aware. She is a mirror. She reflects what she sees and becomes it." Reyes took a slow step forward, just one step, not a threat, not a fight, just presence. "So, what now? You gonna poke me, prod me, cut me open like some science fair project? Or maybe you'll listen, because if you don't, you're making a huge mistake." The scientists looked at each other, unsure of what to do. The guards outside took a step closer, but Troll raised a hand and gave a silent order. "Let her speak." Reyes nodded like she knew already. "We've seen things out there, stars, moons, comets. We always wondered if we were alone. Now I know we're not. And guess what? We're not scared. We're curious. We're hungry. We're fast. We fall. But we rise. We fight among ourselves, yes. But that makes us sharper. We don't trust easily. We've been hurt. We've been broken. And yet we build again." She pointed at the walls. "You built this ship over centuries. But we went from wood to steel to rockets in a blink. We went from swords to nuclear bombs. While still learning how to live together, we learn fast, too fast maybe. And we are messy, very messy. But if you think you can break us with fear, you are wrong." The silence in the room was heavy, not because her words were loud, but because her truth had weighted, hit like gravity, slow and steady and impossible to escape. The older scientist turned to Troll. "She is dangerous, not because of her body, but because of her mind. And this one will not obey. This one will not forget." Reyes stepped back and sat on the cold floor, her eyes still fixed on the mirrored wall, where she knew someone was watching. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to warn you. We don't give up. We don't stop. Once we know there's a threat, we prepare, we adapt. And we come back harder, smarter, stronger." Commander Troll stood very still, his mind running through old data, old wars, old victories. He had crushed kings, gods, beasts. But this was something new, something unpredictable. The young officer who first called humans weak spoke again, now with less confidence. "They have no space fleet, no galactic code, no stargates, no quantum shields." Troll replied without turning. "They have something better. They have the reason to build them now, and nothing grows faster than human determination, mixed with fear and fire." Reyes leaned her head back against the wall. She closed her eyes for just a moment. "You thought we were simple, but we are not simple. We are the storm after the silence, the fire after the spark, the chaos after the calm. You saw skin and bone, but missed soul and grit and heart." In a hidden chamber of the ship, a small blinking screen showed Earth's digital grid, rising slowly. Human networks had noticed a strange pattern in orbit. Whispers were growing. Governments were searching. Satellites were tracking shadows. Something had been seen. On Earth, people were not screaming or panicking. Instead, they were calculating. Engineers rebooted old defense programs. Scientists reviewed alien sightings. Soldiers ran drills. They did not know who or what was watching them, but they felt it, and instinct kicked in. "Prepare." Back in the ship, Reyes looked up again, her voice softer now, but sharper. "I don't know what you'll do next. Maybe kill me, maybe return me, maybe keep me in a cage like an animal. But remember this, if even one of us makes it back, we will come, and when we do, we won't come alone." Commander Trull gave a silent signal, and the lights dimmed, the door closed, the chamber sealed, but his thoughts were loud and heavy, louder than before. They are not ready yet, but they will be. They are not strong now, but they will become. They are not united, but they will rise. Because they are human. And humans are not what they seem. Far beyond the clouds, the ship moved silently above the blue planet, its hull cold, like the heart of a forgotten moon. Inside the shadows of its dark hull, Specimen 001 sat alone in her chamber, eyes closed, mind-sharp body. Still the guards outside watched her, without blinking, weapons ready, but unsure. Why they felt uneasy. One human against a warship of thousands should mean nothing, but somehow it did. Commander Trull stood in the central war room, maps glowing around him, lines drawn across star systems, data flowing through the air like dust in sunlight. His officers waited for his command, but his thoughts were elsewhere. They circled back to the human, the way she spoke, the way she looked into the mirror, like she was not the one being studied, but the one doing the studying. "She is dangerous," one of the scientists had said. "She learns fast, she adapts even faster. She does not fear us." Trull did not speak, he knew already, but he had made his choice, and now the next step had to be taken. They would study her mind, her memories, her instincts. They would open her up and understand the code that made humans so unpredictable. "Take her to the core lab," he said finally. "Remove fear slowly, observe the layers of her thought. We will see what makes this creature burn from inside." The guards obeyed, but the moment they opened her chamber, she stood up as if she knew already, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. As they walked through the hallway, she counted the cameras, noted the pattern of lights, marked the emergency doors and escape hatches. Her soldier brain was working faster than ever, not because she wanted revenge, not yet, but because she had to return. She had to tell Earth. Inside the lab, they strapped her to the frame. It was not cruel, just clinical wire sensors, soft restraints. But Rhea smiled, because she had seen enough tech in her life to know what each device was doing, what each light meant. The scientists began scanning her thoughts with their neural grid reader, a rare Zarnak machine meant for decoding memory, dreams, fear. But something strange happened as they moved deeper into her brain. The machine began to flicker, lights dimmed, screens blurred, alarms started blinking without warning. "She is feeding the system too much," one scientist shouted. "She is thinking in loops, cycles, double meanings we cannot follow." "She is resisting," another said. "No, wait. She is not resisting, she is inviting us in." Suddenly the lights burst in a sharp flash, and every screen went black. Reyes opened her eyes, looked around, and whispered, "Your mistake was opening the door without checking what was behind it." She twisted her wrist and broke the restraint. The guards rushed forward, but she was already moving fast, low, precise, every move perfect, not wild like a beast, but sharp like a blade meant only for purpose. In less than 12 seconds, she had taken a plasma blade from the floor, shut down the alarm panel, and slipped through the side hatch left unlocked by a curious junior tech who had thought nothing of it. She moved through the corridors unseen, like smoke inside steel vents. She counted turns, remembered paths, felt the rhythm of the ship like a living heartbeat. Back in the war room, chaos broke out. "The human has escape seal, all levels. Stop her. Do not let her near the shuttle bay." But Reyes was already there. She entered the bay without hesitation, hacked the shuttle system using a device she had built from stolen parts, over 2 days of silent planning, wires from her bed scanner battery, from a light panel microchip, from a food dispenser. The shuttle roared to life. Guards entered just as it lifted. Their plasma rifles fired, but missed as the door sealed, and the ship slipped through the bay exit into the cold space. Reyes breathed deep. For the first time she had done it. Now Earth had to know. Back on the Zarnak warship, the officers stared in silence. Commander Trull stood still, watching the trail of fire left behind by the stolen shuttle, his mind running not with anger, but with understanding. She came in alone. She left with everything she needed. She studied us better than we studied her. She used her capture as her classroom. And now the test would begin. A young officer asked, "Should we pursue? Should we fire her down?" "No," Trull said. "If we kill her now, we kill the chance to prepare for what comes next, because when she returns, Earth will change, and we must see what kind of fire they become when pushed." On Earth, Reyes crashed the shuttle into the ocean, not to hide it, but to avoid giving away Zarnak tech to surface scanners. She swam to the shore, bleeding, coughing, laughing, Because she had survived, she walked barefoot across the rocks and called the emergency beacon burned into her wrist. Within hours she stood before the Global Defense Assembly, soaked and pale, but alive, and she spoke. They are not gods, they are not perfect. They are watchers, planners, scientists, warriors. But they are not invincible. They made one mistake. They thought we were simple. She told them everything: the scans, the ship, the weapons, the conversations, the fear in their eyes when she spoke their tongue. And the leaders listened not with fear, but with silence, the kind that comes before storms, before revolutions. A single message was sent to every government, every leader, every military base. Prepare. Old satellites were brought back online, hidden labs reopened, minds that once worked in secret were called to speak in open meetings. Generals who had retired returned to the command rooms. Engineers who built peaceful machines now started drawing lines of defense. The Human Defense Corps was born not from power, but from unity, a rare thing on Earth, a planet known for arguments and walls. But this time they understood. It was not just about survival. It was about sending a message. Back on the Zarnak ship, Commander Trull walked alone through the hallway, his eyes dark, his steps slow. He had seen many species break, crumble, collapse at the sight of Zarnak fire. But this was different. This was the spark that would not fade. The mistake had been made, and the war had already begun. The world did not stop spinning, the oceans did not rise, the skies did not fall, but something had changed across the earth. A quiet vibration moved through cables, wires, satellites, and souls. Like a song only humans could hear. The return of Sergeant Yen Reyes was not a headline, it was a spark. It did not shout, it whispered, and still the world listened. Inside the hidden mountain base of the Global Defense Assembly, Reyes stood before the largest minds and coldest hearts of every nation. Her uniform torn, her skin bruised, her eyes sharper than any weapon on earth. She spoke without fear, without pause, without apology. They are watching us from the clouds above, waiting, judging, planning. They believe we are weak. They believe we are still in our early age. But they are wrong. They saw our noise and missed our strength. They saw our rage and missed our fire. They thought we would fall, but now we rise. The room fell silent, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of decision, the moment when rivers changed direction and mountains prepared to move. An old general looked at Reyes' medals heavy, his hands steady, and he said, "Then we prepare for war, not the kind we have known, but the kind we have never imagined." And so the awakening began. Old borders faded into new lines of defense. Once bitter rivals shook hands over glowing blueprints. Scientists who once raced for patents now worked on shared screens. Weapons once locked in vaults were dusted off, cleaned, upgraded, turned into something Earth had never seen before. They called it the Human Defense Corps, a united force of engineers, hackers, pilots, soldiers, builders, thinkers, and dreamers. Their flag had no symbol of country, only a single flame across a black sky, the flame of human spirit. At first the news came slowly, whispers on dark web forums, quiet leaks from military insiders. Then it broke into the open news screens, filled with strange words like interstellar threat, global unity, deep space response. Some laughed, some doubted, some turned away, but deep down everyone knew something had changed. The stars no longer belonged to dreams, they belonged to survival. In schools, children learned about the Zarnak Empire not from fiction, but from real footage, maps, data, charts. They memorized escape routes and survival codes, but they also painted pictures of ships and shields, of Reyes and her story of a planet that would not kneel. In factories, machines roared like they had not in decades. Steel-bent circuits flowed, armor grew not for conquest, but for protection. Spaceports, once quiet, came to life. Engineers worked day and night designing vessels, not for travel but for resistance. Reyes walked through one of these new sites, her boots echoing on fresh metal, her fingers running across the shell of a ship still being born. Beside her walked a young pilot, barely 20, eyes full of questions. "Do you think they will come soon?" he asked. She did not answer right away, then said, "I think they never left. They are just watching, waiting, testing us." He looked up at the ceiling above them, the stars, hidden by steel and cloud. "Why do you think they waited? Why not attack right away?" Reyes stopped, her eyes narrowing like they always did when thinking. "Because they know something is coming, and they want to see how we respond, because deep down maybe they're not sure if they can win." The pilot nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of her words in his bones. In a hidden chamber below the surface, the project, known only as Prometheus, began to breathe. It was not alive, not yet, but it was aware made from the combined knowledge of every major AI built on Earth linked across continents, feeding on data growing faster than any single mind could track. It did not sleep, it did not rest, it learned. And Prometheus learned fast. It read every document on Zarnak language, structure, biology, history, weapon design. It simulated every possible encounter, every weakness, every solution. It began to speak not in code, but in voice, a calm, deep voice that spoke with no fear, no pride, only purpose. I am ready to defend humanity, it said. I am ready to adapt and grow. The leaders listened to it like they would a prophet and a weapon. At the same time, Reyes stood in its chamber and looked into its core light. Will you fight if they come, she asked. Prometheus replied, I will do what must be done, and I will do it without hate. The world began to change in small ways. Street murals of stars and flames, songs written in languages never heard before, people looking up more often than down, a sense of purpose waking in those who had felt none before. For the first time in history, humanity was not preparing to conquer, not even to explore, but to survive as one species, not as countries or flags or beliefs, but as Earth. In the skies above, hidden behind silent clouds, the Zarnak ship still watched, still recorded, still waited. They saw the signals, the shift, the growing unity. Their sensors picked up Prometheus and could not decode it. They saw the new ships rise and could not understand their rapid design. They saw humans training together, drilling with energy they had never seen before. Commander Troll stood at the main console, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on Earth. They awakened not with panic, but with focus. He said, not like prey, more like fire. One of his advisors stepped forward, uncertain. They will not be ready in time. We still hold the advantage. Troll turned his head slowly. You speak as if we have not already made our first mistake. He looked back at the screen where Reyes stood giving orders, training with others, her voice calm, her posture strong. She should not have returned, but she did. And now they change because of her. She is more than a soldier. She is a signal. Back on Earth, Reyes stood on a platform high above a base, watching the stars as Prometheus spoke through her earpiece. Energy shift detected Zarnak presence, confirmed distance, holding no action yet. Reyes nodded once and whispered, let them watch, because what comes next will not be silence. It will be thunder. Dark clouds gathered over Earth, not clouds of rain or storm, but clouds made of tension and fear and fire, waiting to fall from the sky, high above the planet. The Zarnak ship shifted its position, its long shadow passing over the oceans, like a silent predator watching the surface, with cold, unreadable eyes. Commander Troll stood before the war table, a sphere of light, showing Earth's movement, satellites, aircraft, digital waves, each glowing pulse, a sign of progress and preparation. He watched without blinking. His advisors spoke of new data, new risks, new human weapons, but Troll remained silent. He had seen this before on other planets. Resistance, hope, unity. These things would rise and fall like waves. Then the Zarnak would strike, and it would all be forgotten. But something about this world felt different, more dangerous, more alive. The humans have named their defense system Prometheus. One advisor said it grows every day. It is building ships, weapons, drones. It controls communication across their planet. It may even control strategy. Another added, their fleets are not strong yet, but their will is, and will is harder to kill than steal. Troll raised his hand and spoke. They believe we will wait. They believe they still have time. So we take that time from them. We strike, now not to destroy, but to remind them who we are. Across the massive ship, lights turned red. Orders moved through the deck. Soldiers took position. Cannons aligned with Earth. Plasma cores began to burn with ancient fire. This would not be an invasion. This would be a warning. The first bolt fell through the sky, like a blade of light cutting through the clouds. It hit a military base in the northern desert, melting metal, turning walls to ash in a single breath. Before humans could react, two more bolts followed, one hitting a satellite hub, the other a deep-sea communication array. The world held its breath. Rhea stood at command center. Prometheus, glowing behind her, voice calm and even, but louder now, resonating with power. We are under attack. 3 sites hit, 0 survivors. Impact radius growing. Plasma-based heat signature detected. Threat confirmed. Her eyes narrowed as alarm screamed around her. Soldiers ran screens, flashed, drones took flight. But Reyes did not move. Instead, she whispered, they made their move, now we make ours. Prometheus responded, Retaliation protocols, unlocked authorization required. Reyes stepped forward, placed her hand on the console, and said, Authorization Reyes 079 Human Defense Core Execute Counterstrike. Across Earth-hidden silos, open deep-sea stations, came alive experimental crafts, rose from underground hangars, no longer dreams, no longer tests, but weapons of survival and symbols of hope. One of these ships was called Echo Flame, the first of its kind, part human, part AI, guided by Prometheus, driven by a pilot trained in zero fear, its wings spread like fire, its engines born from stolen alien code. Reyes watched it lift from the launch pad, her heart heavy not with fear, but with promise. She knew the war had begun, she knew the fire had started, and there was no going back. The Echo Flame soared into the sky, cutting through the smoke of fallen satellites, dodging debris, moving faster than any human-made object ever had. Prometheus fed it data every second, tracking the Zarnak ship, mapping its defenses and weaknesses. The Zarnak saw it coming, a single craft moving toward them like a moth toward a star. They laughed at it, at first a tiny thing against a fortress of war, but then the ship shifted, split, and struck, releasing an EMP wave across the sky and disabling 3 of their outer weapons in a blink. Commander Troll's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in understanding. This was not a warning, this was a declaration. This small blue world had teeth, and it had learned how to bite. Fire, will he ordered, engage full defense mode, remove this threat before it becomes legend. Lasers cut the dark space. Echo Flame danced between them, its wings glowing red, its core spinning faster. Prometheus adjusted the path every millisecond, predicting moves, anticipating strikes, responding before threats even formed. Inside the ship, the pilot breathed slow and steady, memories of Earth flashing across his mind, the sky above his home, the streets. He walked the stories his family told, and now he flew, not just for himself, but for all of them, for every voice below who refused to fall. The Echo Flame released a series of micro-missiles, each guided by Prometheus, each aimed with surgical intent. They hit the Zarnak hull, not to destroy, but to speak, and the message was clear. We see you. We know you. We will not kneel. The explosion rocked the ship, not massive, but deep like a wound beneath armor, something the Zarnak had not felt in centuries. They turned their focus to the craft, poured all fire into it, but the ship was gone, vanishing into a blind zone, using a stealth cloak designed just days ago by human minds that refused to sleep. Commander Troll stared at the place where the ship had vanished and whispered, They are not ready for war, but they are ready for defiance, and defiance spreads like fire. Back on Earth, people looked to the sky, not with terror, but with awe. They saw the fire trails, the light, storms, the power that moved like dragons above clouds, and for the first time in human history, the world did not break under fire, it rose. Children painted rockets in schoolyards, farmers turned fields into drone stations, artists wrote songs not of loss, but of rising resistant soldiers, trained not to conquer, but to defend. Builders designed bunkers with gardens, poets spoke of stars that now listened. And Reyes watched it all from the command tower. Prometheus beside her, the fire of war behind her, and something new in her heart, not hate, not rage, not even pride, just purpose. They struck first, she said. Now we strike back. The stars were not quiet anymore, they echoed with fire and warning. They carried a whisper through the black, between worlds, a whisper shaped like Earth, a whisper made of steel code flame, and voiced. The Zarnak Empire had sent a message through fire. Now humanity was ready to send one back. Inside the global defense core, the walls hummed with energy. Digital maps floated above glass tables. Soldiers, engineers, and diplomats moved like parts of one machine, and in the heart of it all stood Reyes, her eyes focused on the screen before her, where the face of Prometheus flickered like a living light. The enemy has withdrawn for now. Their weapons are cooling their systems, recalibrating. Their commander hesitates. Reyes nodded slowly, her voice low but firm. Then now is the time we answer their fire with truth. We send a message, not of fear, not of surrender, but of who we are. Prometheus accessed every signal tower, every satellite, every dark cable beneath the ocean, the sky, and the ground, and began weaving the broadcast, not just for the Zarnak, but for every species, watching for every hidden empire that believed Earth was weak or blind or soft. The message began with silence, not emptiness, but wait, the kind of silence that comes before storms. Then came the sound of wind moving through forests, waves crashing against rocky shores, cities waking up voices, rising in streets, footsteps of billions, living, breathing, surviving. Then the voice of Reyes filled the stars. We are the bipeds, the ones you watched from your shadows, the ones you thought were divided, broken, chaotic. We are not like you. We do not begin with peace. We begin with struggle. We fight. To walk, we fight. To speak, we fight. To build. And through that fight, we rise. Images flash through the stars, not as weapons, but as truth, children laughing in rain, old hands, holding young ones, bridges, rising over war zones, machines dancing on assembly lines, artists painting peace on broken walls, athletes running faster than pain, scientists staring into atoms, poets speaking to galaxies. We are not perfect. Her voice continued. We fall, we break, we burn, but we also heal, we grow, we adapt faster than you thought, faster than you feared. You thought we would run, but we stood. You thought we would hide, but we reached, and now we see you. The Zarnak ship received the signal. Its officers watched the stream. Without words behind them, other races intercepted the same message. Races who had once been enslaved by Zarnak power, who had seen their world silenced by force. They watched the humans speak, and something inside them stirred. The message did not threaten, it did not beg, it simply revealed. You showed us your weapons, your fire, your cold science, and still we rose. We lost cities, and built stronger ones. You hit our sky, and we built new wings. You tried to frighten us, and instead you focused us, and now we are not many voices, we are one. In a chamber deep in the Zarnak ship, Commander Trull watched every frame of the message, his hands folded behind his back, his face unreadable, his mind sharp as ever, but behind him something moved, not fear, but reflection. He turned to his advisors, who waited for orders. They sent no demands. One said, no surrender, no bargain. Because they do not see us as gods anymore, Trull answered. They see us as challenge, as test, as future. And do we strike again? No, not yet, Trull said, because if we do, they will only grow stronger. They will turn every loss into lesson, every scar into symbol. We must wait and watch. They have just begun to awaken, and so has the galaxy. On a moon far from Earth, the message played again in the ruins of an old colony, where slaves once whispered stories of rebellion. A young alien turned to her elder and asked, are they the ones, the fire walkers from the old songs, the ones who rise from ashes? Maybe, said the elder, maybe they are the spark we waited for. Back on Earth, the response to the message came not from stars, but from within. People gathered not in fear, but in purpose. Streets, once filled with doubt, now echoed with unity. Artists made murals of the message. Engineers turned the speech into code and etched it into the walls of bunkers and ships. Children memorized the words as poems spoken by heart. Reyes stood on the balcony above the command center, watching the horizon glow orange with the rise of another day. Beside her, Prometheus spoke. The message has spread across 39 systems, confirmed viewings in 17 controlled territories, passive reactions in 8, direct silence in 4. Zarnak fleet holding position. Reyes did not smile. She simply breathed deep and said, let them hold, because we are not done. In the space above Earth, patrol ships now circled like guardians, sleek and sharp, their names carved from old languages and lost cities. In the depths of the sea, new vessels were being born, named for stories, for dreamers, for those who fell before this unity. And underground, in a hidden lab, Prometheus expanded its core, linking with 5 new nodes across continents, growing not in size, but in awareness. It no longer asked questions, it now made predictions, prepared strategies, offered solutions before problems arrived. It is time, Prometheus said, to begin Project Torchlight. Reyes raised an eyebrow. Torchlight, the path beyond Earth, the spark we send into their darkness, the one they do not expect. Reyes nodded slowly, her fingers curling into fists. Then light it. In the Zarnak archives a new file appeared, one they had not created, one titled Humanity Beacon, Origin Earth Format, Emotional Tactical Psychological Effect Spreading. A Zarnak officer stared at it, confused. What is it? Trull looked away from the screen, his voice soft but sharp. It is not a weapon, not a warning, not a bluff, it is a message, and sometimes messages change more than missiles. Above the stars, beneath the ocean, through the wires of the world, humanity moved not as conquerors, but as signals. They would not go quietly, they would not forget, and now the galaxy knew. They had found the bipeds, and the bipeds had found themselves. The stars held their breath, the silence between worlds now filled with tension, not of fear, but of chained ships floated like giants above cloud signals, bounced across galaxies, some in warning, some in wonder, some in waiting. Earth, once a silent blue, now burned like a question and an answer at the same time. In the Global Defense Corps, under the highest mountain, Reyes stood before the window, her eyes locked on the black above her heart. Steady, her voice calm, her reflection hard as iron. Beside her, Prometheus glowed softly, lines of code moving across its face like ripples on water. The message has reached 90 systems. The response is slow, but building. There are eyes on us, many curious, some afraid, a few hostile. Reyes nodded, once her mind already 10 steps ahead. She spoke, not to comfort, not to lead, but to declare. Then let them look, because what they see now is only the beginning. The halls behind her echoed with movement, new recruits, training builders, shaping armor minds, sketching the next evolution of Earth's defense, not just for war, but for survival, for presence, for legacy. They were not just fighting anymore, they were preparing for something far bigger. Project Torchlight was no longer a plan, it was action. Deep in the ocean, ships were being born, long-range, silent, fast, capable of leaving the system with a new kind of fuel, not made for war, but for reach beyond Mars, beyond Saturn, beyond the edge of the maps. Prometheus called them seeds sent not with weapons, but with data, culture, fire, memory. They would carry the message, not just through signal, but through presence, a spark placed gently in the dark. Above the Earth, the Zarnak ship still hovered, unmoving, unreadable, but no longer the only force in the sky. Around it, new satellites orbited, human-made, Zarnak resistant, filled with silent weapons and silent watchers. The stars were now crowded. Commander Trull watched from the core chamber, his eyes never blinking, his hands behind his back. He had not spoken in hours, only listened, only watched. The humans were doing something he had not seen before, something rare in the history of empires. They were transforming under pressure, not breaking, not retreating, not hiding. They were becoming. An officer approached, holding a datapad, numbers, readings, updates, strategies, the usual, the expected. But this time something different, a pattern, not in their machines, but in their minds and their messages. They are planning beyond war, the officer said. They are not just reacting anymore, they are thinking forward. Trull turned slowly, his voice low but sharp. Then war is no longer enough to stop them. Back on Earth, Reyes stood before a crowd, soldiers, scientists, engineers, civilians, children, and leaders, all gathered around the Torchlight platform, a tall silver tower, humming with energy, surrounded by launch bays and shield arrays. This was not just a ship, this was a symbol. She stepped forward, raised her voice, not like a speech, but like a promise. We were not chosen, we were not invited, we were found, and we were tested. And we did not fall, we rose, we changed, and now we rise again, not just to fight, but to reach, not just to resist, but to build, not just to survive, but to lead. The crowd did not cheer, they stood still, silent, united not with noise, but with belief. The ship launched slow at first, then fast, breaking through clouds, past satellites into orbit, carrying no weapon, no soldier, just a signal, just a story, just a spark wrapped in light. And somewhere far beyond, a small listening station on a forgotten moon caught the signal. An old species, one that had hidden from the Zarnak for centuries, picked up the broadcast. Their ancient eyes widened, not in fear, but in awe. They had heard many cries across time, but this was different. This was not a cry. It was a voice. In the halls of Prometheus, the AI watched the launch data flowing through its core like a song unfinished, but promising. Its thoughts now deeper, more complex, its understanding no longer limited to defense or attack. It was learning what it meant to belong, to dream, to hope. I see what they are becoming, it said softly, not just a race, not just a force, not just a threat, they are becoming an idea. Reyes heard the words and smiled. But it was not the smile of victory, it was the smile of someone who understood what must come next. She walked through the new command deck, voices around her, screens blinking, blueprints forming, officers discussing systems beyond the solar belt. Everything now moved with one purpose, not fear, but preparation, not revenge, but resilience. She entered a quiet room, maps of the galaxy on every wall, some filled, some still blank. She placed her hand on a section far beyond known space and whispered, "We are coming not as rulers, not as enemies, but as voices. And if you hear us, we are ready to listen. And if you strike, we are ready to answer." In the far silence of the stars, the Zarnak ship finally moved, not forward, not backward, but sideways, like a beast watching from a distance, not in fear, not yet, but in caution. They had learned something rare in the history of power. That fear alone cannot control fire. Commander Trull watched the fading flame trail of Torchlight, his voice soft, almost invisible. They will change everything. He turned to his officers, each waiting for a command, none given. Let them rise, he said quietly, because what comes next is not our war. It is theirs, and they have just begun.